Let me speak to your spirit today, because knowledge isn't just power, it's peace, it's healing, and it's revelation. Today, I want to open a window into the heart of a man, not to expose him, but to help you see him. Because behind every strong jawline, every firm handshake, every stoic stare, there's a soul that bleeds. There's a boy that once dreamed. There's a man still searching. So lean in, listen deep, because this isn't about control. It's about compassion, absolutely. Here's an expanded version of key point 1 from the speech without a subtitle or conclusion, crafted in a deeply emotional and soulful tone in the spirit of T.D. Jakes' style. It dives deeper into the fear of not being enough that many men experience but rarely articulate. Let me tell you something that most men will never put into words, not because they're stubborn, not because they're cold, but because somewhere along the way they were trained to bury it. A man can stand in front of the world dressed in confidence, clothed in success, draped in strength, and still go to bed every night wrestling with the question he dares not speak aloud: am I enough? Not rich enough, not smart enough, not good enough, not man enough. This is a quiet torment, a private pressure that never turns the volume down, because from the time he was a boy, he was taught to chase goals, chase approval, chase strength, and with every step he was told that his worth is in his work. His value is in what he produces, and if he fails, then somehow he is a failure. So he pours himself into achievements, not because he's arrogant, but because he's afraid that if he slows down, afraid that if he can't provide, afraid that if he's not impressive, he'll be replaced, dismissed, forgotten. See, many men carry the burden of proving themselves every day to their partners, to their fathers, to the world, even to God. And if he ever lets down his guard, if he ever gets too tired to perform, if he ever stops striving for just 1 second, he fears the people he loves will look at him differently, because no one told him that his worth was never in his wallet, that his value was never in his victories, that even when he's wounded, he's worthy. Even when he's broken, he belongs. And that's where you come in, because a woman who sees past his paycheck, past his posture, past his pride, and reaches for his soul is a woman who changes a man's life. He doesn't need you to fix him. He doesn't need you to feed his ego at all. He desperately needs to be reminded that he is enough as he is. Not because of what he does, but because of who he is. And let me tell you something else. Sometimes when he's silent, when he withdraws, when he stops talking or stops trying, it's not that he doesn't care, it's that he doesn't feel capable. See, a man who feels he can't win will stop playing the game. He'll shut down. He'll numb out, not because he doesn't love you, but because he doesn't love himself in that moment. And if you don't understand this fear, you'll take his silence personally. You'll think he doesn't value you, when really, he's wondering if you still value him. Let that sink in. This is the fear that walks beside him every day. A fear he tucks beneath his smile, a fear he hides behind his jokes, a fear that whispers, if they knew the real me, would they still stay? So woman of wisdom, speak life when the world speaks pressure. Speak grace when he feels guilt. Remind him, you don't have to do more to be more. You are already enough. Absolutely. Let's expand key point 2, continuing in that raw, emotionally charged, spiritually grounded style, deeply reflective, powerful, and intimate. Here we go. There's a heaviness that men carry that rarely has a name. It's not just stress. It's not just pressure. It's a weight built from silent expectations, ones he never agreed to, but was expected to carry anyway. From the moment he became a man, or maybe even long before that, he was taught a message without words. You don't get to break. You don't get to cry. You don't get to feel. He was told to stand tall, to push through, to man up, no matter what life throws at him. He's supposed to take it on the chin, grit his teeth, and keep walking. not a whimper, not a tear, not a sign of weakness, because somewhere along the way, weakness became the enemy. But let me tell you something, it's not weakness that breaks men, it's the absence of permission to feel it. He's expected to be the rock. But what happens when the rock is tired? He's expected to lead, but what happens when he feels lost? He's expected to protect, but who protects him? These are the expectations no one talks about. The invisible rules written by culture, by society, by history, rules that say, if you're a man, you don't get to be human. And so he becomes a master of masks. He smiles when he's broken. He laughs when he's anxious. He works overtime to outrun the ache, because if he stops, he might finally feel it all, and that scares him more than anything. You ask him, why don't you open up? He doesn't even know how. No one taught him. And worse, when he tried in the past, maybe he was mocked, ignored, or misunderstood, so now he wears his silence like armor, and you wonder why he pulls away. It's not that he's distant, it's that he's exhausted, because carrying the weight of being everyone's strength with no one to help carry his isn't bravery, it's burnout. He doesn't want to disappoint. He doesn't want to be seen as weak. He doesn't want to admit that sometimes he just doesn't have the answers. So he pretends to be okay, pretends to have it all together, pretends the pressure isn't pushing him to the edge, but deep inside he's waiting, hoping someone will see it, not fix it, just see it. Someone who won't tell him to man up, but who will simply say, you're allowed to rest, you're allowed to feel, you're allowed to be human, and that someone might be you. Let me say this loud. He doesn't need someone to take away the weight. He needs someone to sit with him while he carries it. Someone who doesn't criticize his silence, but understands the sound of unspoken pain. When you understand the silent expectations he faces, you stop taking his walls personally. You start seeing not just the armor, but the reason for it. Because beneath every man who seems unshakable is often a soul that's scared to be seen. Not because he doesn't want to be vulnerable, but because vulnerability cost him something once, and he hasn't forgotten. So if he lets you in, even just a little, don't rush it. Don't demand he speak your language of emotion. Instead, learn his language of pain. Sometimes his silence is a scream. Sometimes his distance is a prayer. And sometimes his strength is just a cover for his fatigue. If you can love him there, if you can sit with him there, that's where transformation begins. Not in fixing him, not in saving him, but in simply understanding him. Absolutely. Here's a deep, soul-stirring expansion of key point 3 in that same emotional, heartfelt tone. We're diving into the deep desire and dependency men have on respect, often more vital than love and how they interpret connection and worth. Let me say something bold, something many don't understand until it's too late. A man can survive without praise. He can survive without comfort, but he cannot thrive without respect. Respect isn't just nice to have. It is air to his lungs, water to his roots, fuel to his spirit. You can love a man and he'll appreciate it. But if you love him and don't respect him, he'll slowly begin to die on the inside, piece by piece, bit by bit, because to a man, respect doesn't feel like a bonus. It feels like identity. When a man walks out into the world every morning, he's stepping onto a battle. He's fighting expectations. He's battling comparison. He's dealing with rejection, pressure, competition, and questions about who he is and if he's doing enough. And when he comes home, he's not just looking for peace, he's looking for honor. He's not perfect, he knows that. But he's hoping, just hoping, that the woman beside him still sees the good in him. That when the world strips him down, you'll still see the man he's trying so hard to be. That when he's made mistakes, you'll still speak to the king in him, even if right now he feels like a pauper. Because here's what so many don't realize. Men rise to the level of how they are seen. You speak to his flaws and you'll get more of them. You speak to his strength and you'll start to wake it up. Even a struggling man, when spoken to with honor, will begin to climb. He will stretch. He will strive. Why? Because the woman beside him believes he can. And when a man feels believed in, he'll walk through fire just to prove her right. But when you criticize him constantly, when you compare him to someone else, when your words cut deeper than your silence ever could, he doesn't fight back. He shuts down. He may still be present physically, but emotionally, he's gone, because disrespect is death by 1,000 paper cuts. And unlike wounds from the world, the wounds from the one he loves, they echo louder. They linger longer. That's why sarcasm stings. That's why public criticism wounds. That's why emasculation doesn't just hurt, it humiliates. And no man can grow in a place where he feels diminished. You see, when a woman loses love, she often feels unloved. But when a man loses respect, he feels unseen, unworthy. It's not just about admiration, it's about acknowledgement. Noticing what he tries to do even when he doesn't succeed. Appreciating the effort even when the outcome isn't perfect. Thanking him for what he provides, even if it's not flashy or grand. And let me be clear, respect doesn't mean agreeing with everything. It doesn't mean tolerating bad behavior. It doesn't mean staying silent, but it means disagreeing without dishonoring demeans, challenging him without crushing him. It means holding him accountable without making him feel less of a man. Because deep down, every man is asking one quiet question: do you still look at me like I matter? Respect is not just something he wants from you. It's something he wants to feel when he looks in your eyes. He can hear 1,000 people clap for him in the crowd. But if you don't see him, if you don't celebrate him, all those voices will still leave him empty. So the next time you see your man trying to provide, trying to heal, trying to lead, trying to love, say something that builds him. Say something that reminds him that you still see the man beneath the struggle. Because when you give a man respect, you don't just strengthen him, you resurrect him. Oh yes, we're about to go deeper. Let's expand key point 4 in the same fire-railed, soul-reaching style. This one. It's all about vulnerability, the silent struggle so many men battle with behind closed doors. Let's talk about something real. You want to know why many men struggle to open up? Why they retreat behind short answers and nervous laughter? Why they change the subject when things get too deep? It's not because they don't feel. It's because they've been taught not to show it. Vulnerability is supposed to be human, but for men, vulnerability was made into a threat, a liability, a weakness, something to avoid, to bury, to be ashamed of. See, from a young age, boys are conditioned: stop crying. Don't be soft, man up, shake it off, be tough. And every time they felt something real, something tender, something honest, they were met with rejection or silence or worse, ridicule. So eventually he learned it's safer to shut down than to speak up. It's better to be numb than to be exposed, because showing emotion didn't feel like healing, it felt like risking everything. Understand this, for many men, vulnerability doesn't feel natural. It feels like stepping out on a wire with no net. It feels like handing you the most fragile part of his soul and praying you don't drop it. Because here's the truth they rarely admit: most men aren't afraid of being vulnerable. They're afraid of being vulnerable and then being rejected for it. He may have opened up once and been told he was being too emotional, too dramatic, too sensitive, too much. And now he'd rather be silent than scarred again. But oh, how much he's holding in. The guilt, the fear, the grief, the stress, the trauma, the words he couldn't say when he was 12, the pain he couldn't process at 19, the insecurities that still echo in his 30s, 40s, 50s. He's carrying it all quietly, with a straight face, with tired eyes, with shoulders that sag under the weight of unspoken wounds. You might ask him, "What's wrong?" He'll say nothing. But inside, there's a storm. He wants to tell you, wants to let you in, wants to be seen and heard and held. But first, he needs to know it's safe. Not safe to fix it, Not safe to solve it, but safe to feel it in your presence without being judged. Because the moment a man realizes he can be both strong and soft in front of you, that he doesn't have to perform, posture, or pretend, is the moment his guard starts to drop. But don't expect it all at once. Don't demand tears when he's only just learned to speak. Don't criticize the way he opens up if he's never had to before. Let him show you the scar before he tells you the story. Because to a man, vulnerability is earned, not with pressure, but with patience. Not with pushing, but with presence. He needs to feel that he won't be weaponized later for what he reveals today. That if he shares the darkness in his soul, you won't use it to shame him when you're angry. He's not looking for perfection in you. He's looking for protection from you. A safe place, a soft landing, a gentle hand that says, I see your wounds and I'm not running from them. And when you give him that, he'll open, he'll speak, he'll unravel in the best way. Because suddenly he doesn't have to be the warrior all the time. He gets to be the man, the human, the heart. And let me tell you something powerful. When a man finds a place where he can be vulnerable without being devalued, that place becomes sacred to him. He will protect it. He will cherish it. He will never forget it because it's rare, and anything rare becomes priceless. Absolutely. Let's expand key point 5 in the same spirit-driven, hard-hitting style. This point dives into one of the most misunderstood aspects of a man's life, his deep hunger for affirmation and the unspoken way he often questions his own value. Here we go. There's a secret question living in the heart of every man, a question that doesn't shout. It whispers, not in public, but in private, not in victory, but in the quiet after the battle. And that question is, am I truly appreciated? You see, men often don't ask for affirmation, not because they don't need it, but because they've been trained not to expect it. So they bury the need. They mask it with performance. They pretend they don't hear the silence, even when it's deafening. But let me tell you something, a man who is never affirmed becomes a man who is always unsure if he's doing enough, unsure if he's being enough, unsure if what he gives, what he sacrifices, what he pushes through even matters to the people he loves. He can bring home the check, he can fix the car, he can protect the family, cut the grass, carry the weight of the world, and still lay in bed at night feeling like a ghost in his own house, not because he wants to be celebrated like a hero, but because he just wants to know that someone sees him, that his effort doesn't disappear into the background of daily life. You may think, well, he knows I appreciate him, but listen to me. Silence doesn't speak the way you think it does. Men don't read between the lines. They live in a world of direct impact. What's said, what's shown, what's felt. So when nothing is said, he hears nothing, and that nothing becomes doubt, and that doubt becomes distance. Because here's what no one tells you. Even strong men need encouragement. Even silent men long for recognition. Even confident men wrestle with internal criticism. And when a man doesn't hear words of affirmation from the one he loves, he starts trying to earn in silence what should have been freely given. He starts overextending, overperforming, overcompensating, not because he's trying to impress strangers, but because he's starving for significance in his own home. He may not say it out loud, but he needs to know that what he does matters, that his effort is noticed, that his presence is appreciated, that his sacrifices aren't assumed, they're valued. Doesn't take much. A simple thank you for what you do. A soft, I see how hard you're trying. A whispered, I'm proud of you. These words, they may seem small, but to a man's heart, they are life-giving, they are soul-repairing, they are motivation to keep going when life gets heavy. Because here's the truth, a man who feels appreciated will always give more. Not because he has to, but because he wants to. Affirmation doesn't just build confidence, it builds commitment. A man will rise to meet your words. He will grow into your belief in him. He will reach for greatness if he knows that greatness is seen by you. But if he never hears it, if he's constantly corrected but never commended, he'll start to question everything. He'll wonder why he tries. He'll go quiet, not out of anger, but out of fatigue. Because giving and giving without being acknowledged feels a lot like being taken for granted. And a man who feels invisible in the place he gives his all, he won't fight. He won't argue. He'll just slowly fade. So don't just love him, affirm him, not just when he wins, but when he's trying. Not just when he gets it right, but when he shows up even tired and flawed. Affirm him in front of others. Affirm him behind closed doors. Affirm not just what he does, but who he is. Because when a man feels affirmed, he becomes unstoppable. Not just in the world, but in love. Let's dive right into key point 6 with that same emotional gravity, raw truth, and redemptive energy. This one's about how men process failure. Not just externally, but deep in the hidden places of their soul. Get ready to go deep. There's a kind of pain a man carries that rarely gets spoken. It's not physical, it's not loud, it's not even visible to the naked eye. It's the pain of personal failure. Now hear me clearly. This isn't always about falling apart in public. Sometimes the failure is quiet. Sometimes it's the business that didn't work. Sometimes it's the job he lost but never told anyone how much it crushed him. Sometimes it's the father he wanted to be but hasn't figured out how. Sometimes it's the promises he made but life got in the way and he's ashamed. Yes, ashamed. See, when a man fails, it doesn't just feel like a mistake, it feels like an identity crisis. Because his worth is so often tied to his ability to produce, provide, protect, and perform. So when he fails in those areas, even just once, he doesn't just feel like he messed up. He feels like he is the mess. That's the difference. He doesn't separate what happened from who he is. He internalizes it. He brands himself with it. And worse, he won't tell you. He'll just grow quiet. He'll isolate. He'll become short with his words or too busy to be emotionally present. Because admitting that he feels like a failure would mean confirming the fear he already believes. And let me be real, some men never recover from one deep disappointment, not because they can't, but because they never had the space to grieve it, to talk through it, to cry over it, to feel safe enough to say, I thought I'd be further by now. I thought I'd be better. I thought I'd be enough. Instead, he puts on the mask, the I'm fine, the it is what it is, the don't worry about me. But deep down, he's haunted by what he didn't become, by the version of himself he promised to build, by the dream he had to bury because reality came knocking. And if you're close to him, you might misread it. You might think he doesn't care, that he's unmotivated, that he's emotionally unavailable. But what you're really seeing is a man wrestling with defeat, not just circumstantial defeat, but spiritual fatigue. The kind of soul weariness that doesn't just sit in the heart, it weighs on his back, it fogs his mind, and it dims his eyes. And the last thing he needs is more criticism. He's already his own harshest judge. What he needs is compassion. He needs a voice that doesn't minimize the fall, but reminds him that the fall doesn't define him. He needs someone to sit beside him, not above him, and say, even if you failed, you are not a failure. Remind him that progress isn't always visible, that growth sometimes looks like survival, that some days just showing up is the most courageous thing he can do. And maybe most importantly, remind him of what's still inside him, the grit, the gift, the fire. Because failure may have knocked him down, but it didn't erase what God put in him. And if he can start to believe that again, even just a little, he'll rise. Not overnight, not perfectly, but he'll rise. Because what a man really needs when he feels like he's failed is not someone to fix him, but someone to see past the rubble and still recognize T. All right, let's open the door on key point 7. And this one goes deep into the unspoken territory of a man's need for peace. Not the kind of peace the world talks about, but a sacred inner peace that often lives or dies in the space he shares with the woman closest to him. Let's go. Every man you've ever met, no matter how strong, how loud, how driven, has something deep in his soul that craves more than success, more than money, more than attention. He craves peace. Not the absence of noise, but the absence of war. Not quiet, but calm. Not silence, but stillness, because a man can handle storms outside as long as there's peace inside. He can handle the pressure of work. He can fight battles in the world. He can hustle, grind, push through exhaustion. But when he comes home, he's not looking for another battlefield. He's looking for refuge. Let's be honest. So many men don't say this out loud. They won't ask for peace. They won't beg for peace, but they'll withdraw from chaos. They'll shut down around conflict. They'll go silent in the presence of constant criticism. Because for him, peace isn't luxury, it's survival. If the home becomes a place of tension, if every conversation feels like confrontation, if every mistake is remembered and replayed, he will feel like he's fighting in the one place he was supposed to rest. And it's not that he's running away, it's that he's tired, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally tired. He's not asking for a perfect home. He knows life gets messy. He knows arguments happen. He knows disagreements are part of the process. But he's praying, even if he doesn't say it, that the atmosphere in his home won't be one of constant tension, that he can sit down and breathe, that he won't have to explain every sigh, that he won't have to defend his every action, that he won't be walking on emotional eggshells in his own sanctuary. And sometimes what a man really needs isn't more money, it's not more sex, it's not more food on the table. He needs to come home and know, I'm safe here. Safe to fail, safe to be silent, safe to be human, safe to not be the answer to everything all the time. And if you give a man that kind of peace, you will unlock something sacred in him. He will protect it. He will provide for it. He will pour into it, because the place that gives him peace becomes the place he invests in the most. But let me warn you, if he can't find peace at home, he'll start looking for it in other places. And I don't mean another woman. Sometimes it's his garage. Sometimes it's his car. Sometimes it's hours alone on his phone. Sometimes it's long drives with no destination, not because he's hiding, but because he's looking for a moment of mental exhale. Peace is oxygen to a man, and the woman who understands that, she doesn't just keep a man's love, she becomes the one place he knows he can collapse without being crushed. You want to win a man's heart in a way that lasts? Create a space where his soul can rest. A space where every day doesn't feel like a proving ground. A space where he doesn't have to have all the answers. A space where laughter lives, where kindness speaks louder than sarcasm, where mistakes are handled with grace instead of grudges. Because when a man finds peace, you don't have to tell him to stay. He'll build his life around that peace. He'll fight for it. He'll protect it. He'll grow in it. And more than that, he'll become the man you knew he could be all along. Let me know when you're ready for key point 8. This final one's gonna bring the heat and the healing. Let's go ahead and break open key point 8. And this one hits at the heart of something rarely spoken yet deeply felt. A man's fear of not being truly understood. It's not about being right. It's not about being in control. It's about the quiet ache of being misread over and over until he wonders if anyone sees the man behind the mask. Let's take it all the way. Every man carries a story that's never fully told. Not because he doesn't want to tell it, but because he's not sure you'd understand it, even if he did. See, a man's world isn't built just on what he shows. It's built on what he survives. And a lot of what he survives he never puts into words, not because it doesn't matter, but because he doesn't think it's worth the risk of being judged, risk of being dismissed, risk of hearing you're overthinking, when in reality he's been overfeeling and doesn't know what to do with it. So what does he do? He adapts. He communicates in actions. He tries to speak love in ways that aren't always obvious. He may not write poems, but he shows up, he fixes things, he pays attention to the little stuff. He works when he's tired. He makes sure you're okay before he makes sure he's okay. That's his language, but too often that language goes unnoticed. And when he finally tries to explain himself, what he needs, how he thinks, what's weighing on him, he gets cut off. He gets misunderstood, or worst of all, he gets corrected before he gets heard. You don't know how deep that hits a man, because what you may see as disagreement, he might feel as disconnection. You call just being honest, he hears as you still don't get me. And here's the thing, men don't need someone to agree with them all the time. They just want someone who's trying to understand where they're coming from. Trying to understand why he shuts down when he's overwhelmed, why he's quiet after a long day, why he gets defensive when he feels unheard, why certain tones, certain words, certain patterns trigger stuff he never talks about. Because behind that reaction is usually a reason. Behind that silence is usually a memory. Behind that wall is usually a wound. Men don't put up walls because they're hiding secrets. They put up walls because they've tried before to let someone in and it didn't go well. They got misunderstood, talked over, laughed at, used, or abandoned. So they build barriers, not because they want distance, but because they're terrified of misconnection. The greatest pain isn't being alone. It's being with someone and still feeling alone. So what does a man need? Not someone who has him figured out, but someone who's willing to learn him bit by bit, layer by layer, without rushing the process, without demanding the perfect version of him, without punishing him for the parts that don't make sense right away. He needs to hear. I'm listening. Not just with your ears, but with your spirit. He needs to hear, help me understand, not you're being too much. He needs you to ask, what do you need, not assume you already know. Because when a man feels understood, when he sees that you're not just reacting to what he says, but reaching for what he means, that's when he starts opening the doors. That's when he starts telling the stories. That's when he starts revealing the fears, the dreams, the disappointments, the hopes, the real man. Not just the representative. And when you get to that level, you'll find he's deeper than you ever imagined, wiser than you thought, more emotional than he let on, and way more loyal to the woman who finally saw him. Because that's what understanding does. It builds intimacy, it builds connection, it builds home. Not just a place to live, but a place where his soul can be known. And when a man feels known, he'll give you everything he's got. That's the final key. And maybe the most sacred of all. If you want to keep building on this, maybe a powerful wrap-up summary or even a speech version, I'm ready when you are. Let's bring this all together, wrapping it up with the power and depth of everything we've uncovered. Here's the conclusion that ties it all together. Listen, ladies, if you've walked through the complexities of a man's heart with me today, then you know something powerful. Men are not puzzles to be solved. They're people to be understood. They are a mix of strength and fragility, quiet battles and loud victories, endless love and vulnerable souls. A man is not just a provider, a protector, a partner. He's a human being who, just like you, carries the weight of fears, hopes, mistakes, and triumphs. And if you truly want to connect with him, you must see past what he shows on the surface, past the strong exterior, the prideful smile, the stoic silence, and understand the raw truth that lies within. He is vulnerable, even if he doesn't show it. He needs affirmation even when he doesn't act. He fears failure, even if he's never voiced it. He craves peace, even when he's trying to keep it all together. He fears being misunderstood, even when he's silent. But when you see him for all that he is, not just what he does, not just what he brings, but who he is, you unlock the most powerful thing a man could ever give, his heart. And when you create the space for him to feel understood, loved, and appreciated, when you give him the peace he's been longing for, when you affirm his worth in a world that too often makes him question it, when you truly listen to him, not just react to his words, but hear the soul behind them, that's when you see the real man. And trust me, when a man feels seen, understood, and loved in this way, he will give you everything he has. His love, his loyalty, his strength, his heart. Because a man's greatest gift is not in what he can give you, but in the safe space you offer him to be the man he was always meant to be. So honor him not just for what he does, but for who he is and for the journey he's on. Because when you truly understand him, you give him the greatest gift of all, the power to be his best self with you by his side. That's the message. Let this resonate as you move forward. Because a man who feels seen is a man who will stand by you no matter what.